Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Practically 30, our podcast for late 20-something, early 30-something-year-olds, where we talk about practical life skills that weren't taught to us, definitely not in school, maybe not by our parents, and we're just going to try to figure some of these things out together. I'm Emily. This is Tristan, and
Hello.
we have been friends
It's been like a decade.
while.
Too
Yeah,
long.
since freshman year of high school. And now we're just kind of two 26-year-old adults trying to, figure out life.
I think calling 26-year-olds adults is a little bit of a...
That's fair. I do
yeah.
feel like a child still, but
We're all getting through it together.
Yeah.
That's what's important.
yeah. And we're learning along with you. So, forgive us if we make any mistakes along the way, but we're going to try to figure this out.
Yeah. And this first episode is about doing our taxes as 20-something-year-olds, realistically.
Yeah.
I mean, when you get your first job, you're probably going to be doing taxes in some way, shape, or form. So this was kind of a nice intro into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Disclaimer, we are not professionals, obviously. We're not necessarily giving anyone any specific financial advice in general. So, take everything we say with a grain of salt. But we're just going to share our experience, what we've learned, and hopefully it helps some of you out there.
Yeah. And I think, kind of getting into the first thing, what are taxes? It's a weird question because I think a lot of people growing up, they hear taxes are bad. I don't want to pay that many taxes. And it is true. Taxes are money out of your wallet. It's just realistically what it is. But, to preface it, taxes are what allows many of our social services to function. Think of theoretically, there is no potholes in the road because you pay taxes to solve those problems. There is services provided by the government that taxes are paying for, right? That's realistically what taxes are. And we all, if you're living, this is a US-centric podcast, if you're living in the US, you pay taxes to help compensate for those services. That doesn't mean that you want to pay over the amount of taxes that your income says, and we'll talk about it a little bit more as we kind of get into our experiences about that, but that's essentially what taxes are.
Right. They pay for public education, things like the library, different public services like that. And kind of on top of that, I think the goal too is, one, always pay your taxes. Don't skip that. We don't want anyone going to jail.
100%.
But two, kind of the goal I've always heard is, ideally, you should not be getting a tax refund, nor should you be paying anything extra when you file your taxes. Ideally, they're taking the right amount out of your paycheck. So don't feel like, because you have to pay a little extra or you're getting this huge tax refund, it's like super great, like you did super well or anything. It just means that not enough was either taken out of your paycheck or too much was taken out of your paycheck. It's something that should be a little more neutral,
Yeah.
I guess.
And it doesn't help that, as we're going to talk about a bit later, in our experience, many of the services that you kind of work with, they tend to really want you to get a tax refund. They really push in that direction, and part of it is that there is not a lot of infrastructure in place to ensure that you are paid the right amount. So that's kind of the issue at play here. We'll kind of go into that a little bit more as we kind of go into the episode.
Right.
But I think a good thing to bring up is, to that point, taxes are often pretty intimidating, I think, when you start doing them.
For sure. Especially for me. I'm like I get intimidated very easily. So thinking about having to do taxes and how important they are, and kind of having to be good at this skill I was never taught to be like a quote unquote successful adult, is something that's kind of scary, especially when you don't know what to do or where to go, or even once you start, if you're even filing them correctly, or making these mistakes that you aren't even aware of. I think it's really intimidating, and it's to the point where a lot of people procrastinated on it. But there are ways to make it easier. There are resources that we have that we can use, and hopefully kind of in sharing these resources with you, it can seem a little more approachable and manageable, and you're not alone. Before this year, before I started filing taxes by myself, I was kind of very intimidated by it, kind of leery of making, mistakes, things like that. But kind of after finally like getting over the hurdle of like, finally being motivated to do it, it is very approachable and you can do it. And like, don't stress about it too much. Just make sure you do it by the deadline. That's the main thing.
Yeah. And also making sure you're reporting everything. The nice bit is, we'll talk about some of those resources later. There's resources on the IRS. There are software that can help you file taxes. Whether or not you should have to resort to that or not is up for debate.
Right.
But a lot of those will help you through it. They'll tell you exactly what you should be providing, where you should be getting that information from. If you use many financial institutions, come tax season, will generally start telling you, like, hey, we're getting your documents ready, or your documents are ready, here they are, here's where you find them. So they're trying at least to make it easier. Doesn't make it any more approachable a lot of the time, especially if you've never done it before. I remember the first year I did it, like, trying to track down where everything was and how to do it.
Right.
Is very intimidating.
Yeah.
I think a major thing is using these resources, doing your research for your own personal taxes. And if you know anyone in your life who's done taxes before, your parents probably has a good place to start. But if you know anybody in your life who does accounting or anything like that too, you can definitely often reach out to them and they might have some thoughts as well.
Right. And even if like, you're in a situation where like you don't have your parents or you don't know anyone that, has done this type of stuff before, that doesn't mean that like you can't do it or can't do it correctly. There are resources out there, and even like, podcasts, YouTube videos, things that you can like easily find to help you out if you need that sort of support. Kind of jumping off of that, it also, I found, was a lot easier this year to do my taxes because I would like get email reminders that like my W-2 was ready. I would receive things in the mail, and just like being mindful of setting those things aside ahead of time makes it a whole lot easier when you actually sit down to do it. Yeah.
I think it helps that every financial service I've ever used, they'll send you a lot of reminders. And I mean, make sure your emails that's usually where they send it, or your mail. Make sure you're kind of keeping an eye on those things, especially come January of the following year. That's usually when everyone starts at least referencing like, hey, your documents are on the way. But I think with that, from a resource perspective, we'll link some resources below. Definitely check the IRS site, especially if you've got special circumstances. And what I mean by that is if you're a student, for example, or you're in the military, or if you just think that maybe you need to do some further research, we'll link the IRS website below for filing your taxes. That's a really good place to start. They often even have some recommendations of partners to use, and sometimes you can even get at least a free federal tax return. So that's always a good place to start. Of course, other resources, I'm sure if you are on the internet, if you watch TV, if you watch anywhere, you'll see things like Intuit's TurboTax as well, which is another resource that I've used for several years, and I think you used as well. So there's a lot of good resources out there. I definitely recommend starting with IRS, though. Start there. There's TurboTax. I think Free Tax USA is another one that I've heard good things about. Again, not a financial podcast, but feel free to do your research on what works best for you.
And do check, too, because some people do qualify and some don't for free, filing of your taxes and things like that. So just make sure if you're looking for, like if you go into it thinking like, oh, I'm going to file for free, just double check that you do actually qualify for that free filing service. Kind of jumping off of that, let's start talking about these types of services that are available. I think both of us use TurboTax. Yeah. This time around.
Yep.
And like Tristan said, there's a lot of resources other places, but I think today we're going to more talk about our experience, filing our taxes, using TurboTax, the other things we had to do to prep for that type of stuff. I guess I'll kind of just start with my experience. This is kind of the first year that I've done taxes alone, kind of, in many respects, in that like I wasn't having anyone do them for me. And if you are in like a situation where your taxes are relatively easy, you should be able to kind of do them by yourself. Again, like Tristan said, if there's like special circumstances, like you know, inherited a ton of money or use cryptocurrency or something like that makes it a little more nuanced, maybe you would want to hire someone. But a friend did tell me that they actually were talking to like a financial person that was saying that like when people's taxes are so straightforward, it's often not worth getting someone to do your taxes for you, because like they have to bill so high for it to be worth their time to just fill out the forms that it's often you're paying a lot more just simply for their time than is kind of worth your money, in that like just filing through TurboTax or a different platform would cost you a lot less. So be mindful of that too. Like, yes, to some extent your situation might be like you just don't want to spend the time, and so for you the like cost is worth it. But there are a lot of situations where you're like, I just don't know what I'm doing, so like let me just pay for someone. And that's like that's your right, yeah. But I guess my point is more, it's not as complicated as it may seem. Kind of going back to that like intimidation aspect. So for me, this was like kind of my first year kind of trying to like learn how to do my taxes on my own. And because of that, I learned a lot. I guess first and foremost, I started by compiling all of like my paperwork, right? So like I needed all my W-2s. I also printed out my last paycheck I received of the year for each thing, just to like double confirm that things were accurate. And then all of your like investment documents, if you have any, your bank account documents, if you have any, anything that you've received also for like making a charitable donation, which like in my case, I didn't really have any, but like maybe some people that like donate to certain causes regularly or made like a significant donation to like, I don't know, the ASPCA or something, that also goes into your taxes and can help you out with your tax return. And then on top of that, the thing that like I could see myself forgetting is like your car registration. If you pay that, I needed to have that, or I added that document when filing my taxes. So if you still have the document showing like how much you did pay for that and things like that, that's also something good to like keep and file when you do that throughout the year. But yeah, like I said, I use TurboTax. I don't know if there's a free version.
They have like an online version you can start going through. I was actually going to ask. This is, since it's your first time using TurboTax, how did you find going through TurboTax?
I found it really easy in that it really like prompts you for like, do you have this? Did you make any charitable donations? Yes or no? If yes, then I fill out the information. If no, we move on. I found it really user-friendly. The only like exception are in situations where like I wanted to like go back one page to like see what I entered in the last page. That was a little more difficult in that it would take me back to like the beginning of the section and not just the last page I was on. So I kind of had to like click through, then like start over, click through to the page I wanted. That was a little bit annoying, but like other than that, it was pretty easy and quick because this was my first time and like I wanted to make sure that like I was taking notes for like future years and stuff. It actually took me like about 4 hours from start to finish to like do it. So like if you're a beginner, maybe set that much time aside, unless you're like, you know, a quick learner and like are confident that you have all your information ready and everything like that. And then you also, I guess if you're going to use like a platform, make sure one, you have like the most current software for it, but then two, that you get the version that meets your needs. So like, for example, for me, mine were really simple. So I probably could use the like, is it called the deluxe version or something like that? Like the most general version of TurboTax versus like TurboTax Premium or something like that. Because I don't have any like complicated investments. We should
probably mention, what does easy versus complicated mean in the grand scheme of things. I think something that should be understood is having more income does not immediately mean it is more complicated. I should specify that, right? Even if you go into a job, right, and you are making, let's even throw a really high number. Let's say like $300,000, right? Let's say that's your before tax income. if that is your only income and you just pull your W-2 from your job and that is the only source of income you have, you technically have a very simple tax setup. If you have investments in other places, if you have, like, as Emily was saying, like crypto and all these other assets that are gaining income and require maybe some working around and how they fit into your taxes, that's where it can get a little bit complex. But simple versus complex, as we use them here, that's kind of what we're defining. I just kind of wanted to define that a little bit for everyone.
Good. Yeah. So I guess in that respect, like if you do have cryptocurrency or something, maybe you, for your situation, will want to pay for the premium version of TurboTax so that you make sure that you are, getting the type of software that meets your needs. Also, something I didn't know until this year, you're going to have to buy TurboTax every single year.
Yeah.
Like, to me, I just assumed that, like, once you buy it and download it, you could use that moving forward. That is not true, apparently.
No, and to bring us on a little bit of a tangent.
I feel like in the comments, they're going to be like, she's so dumb.
And you know what? I don't think you're dumb for that. I think when I first bought it too, I thought the same thing.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
I'm going to tangent us a little bit here. I do want to point out part of the reason we send you to the IRS site first to look at their partners is because many of them will let you do at least part of the filing for free. TurboTax is kind of, I think when people think of filing taxes, at least I think TurboTax first.
Yeah.
I think the TurboTax kind of has I'm going to call it an incentive to make sure that they are the default software. What we're trying to show here is even though we use TurboTax, there is a lot of other options. There's a lot of other things to try. In my previous year, I did use a different piece of software. I believe it's called Origin Financial. Feel free to do some research into yourself. They're more of a wealth management company, kind of a fintech company. It's something I was trying out to see if that fit into my lifestyle.
Yeah. And just to jump in and be clear, like, we are not specifically endorsing or sponsored by any of these in particular. Like, this is just happens to be what we use. That doesn't mean it's better than anything else. That doesn't mean that, like, we're advocating for this necessarily for your situation.
Or even that you would get better results, honestly.
Right.
But I do want to point out there are other options outside of TurboTax. And part of the reason I bring up other options is go look around and see what fits you best.
Right. Absolutely.
I think it's an important thing to continue to talk about.
Yeah. But yeah. So, kind of jumping off of that, and I think too, TurboTax is pretty available online and everywhere. There's also like a version that Costco sells if you're like, Costco fan. I'm a Costco fan.
A little bit of a discount usually sometimes too on that.
Yeah. So if you want to do like a cheaper option that way, like there are, places that do offer like cheaper versions like that.
Just to jump into here too, there's some financial institutions that do partner with other vendors to help do taxes as well. And to that point, you can get similar discounts to what you would find at something like Costco.
Yeah.
Understanding Costco has the membership and all that, but there's a lot of options.
Yeah.
Search around. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, so while doing my taxes, it was pretty simple. I just followed the prompts when they're like, put in your job description or not your job title, put in, what your W-2 says. You basically just have to like literally read it off. You can there are two ways you can do it. You can either like scan it in or you can manually enter everything. I am like paranoid, so I like entering it manually so I can like just ensure it picked up the right numbers. But I filed as, single. So that was like my particular situation. So that's what I'm going to speak on. And then I guess the most important thing too is like make sure all the information is up to date when they ask you about your personal information. Like make sure that like you are putting your, correct address and like if you change phone numbers, your newest phone number and things like that. And then like, again, I just manually typed in all that information. I manually typed in my W-2s, things like that. And then after entering everything on all of the different pages, they literally walk you through like, okay, this section is jobs. Okay, this section is like medical. This section is like miscellaneous donations, things like that. They will literally walk you through everything.
How easy did you find it to actually get all the documentation? I know you mentioned like gathering all
Yeah,
documents. Like,
so
how easy was that for you?
for me, it was pretty easy in that, like, while I think the other thing too is like I needed to file multiple incomes. So in my case, like I had multiple W-2s. But I kind of got like either something in the mail or like an email every time one was available. So I just had to log in and like print it. That was pretty easy. The one thing that like took the most time, which I think is why it ended up taking 4 hours, is this is the first, I think, year that your overtime can be used as like a tax deduction, or is like exempt. And so I don't know if exempt's the right word, but basically, because it's the first year that that's happened, on your W-2, it's not printed how much overtime you did versus regular time. So like you don't really know the total of like your salary or hourly rate or income versus your overtime income. So I literally had to log in to my the platform that I got my pay stubs from, and I had to literally like go through each pay stub to see which days or weeks I worked overtime and how much. I did that manually and added it up so that I could enter it in. TurboTax also had a calculator to figure it out for you, but it still needed like the amount of overtime. Like you have to like input some information. So like I would have had to input, like I would have had to go through all my paychecks regardless. So I just did it like I manually calculated it and like did the math. Because I was looking at all of my paychecks anyway. I was writing it all down anyway while I was there. So like I did the math manually and like entered that, and like all of that now is kind of a unique thing to this year that you may have not done in the past, even if you did your own taxes last year. So just be mindful of that. Like I don't want you to like skip over that and realize like you could have saved money or you could have gotten money back or whatever. So that was kind of the biggest thing for me. And then, of course there's, maybe this is obvious, maybe not to someone who's never done their own taxes, but like you got to fill out your federal taxes and then you have to fill out your state taxes. So it's not just like one combined, like kind of is, but it's kind of more segmented than that.
Yeah. What certain states tax for is different, and depending on what your income is, they may tax more or less than the federal government, etc. That sort of thing.
But in general, it was pretty simple. It just took a while to like enter all that information. And again, it maybe would have been faster had I just like scanned the documents in. But the nice thing that like I liked was like once you have everything in, it double checks everything for you, and you can click to double check it as many times as you want. So like you can double check it 3 times, you can double check it once. I think it's called like Smart Check or something. Mm-hmm. So I'm just like an anxious person, so I like doing it multiple times. But then even after that, it'll like tell you like if you're like high risk or low risk for like an audit. And it'll also like tell you anytime you made any errors. So like for example, the first time I did it, I ran the Smart Check, and I think I missed putting in like a zip code or something somewhere. Mm-hmm. And it like flagged that and like let me go back and put that in. So like if you're ever nervous about like manually filling things in, like it still checks everything for you and makes sure everything's, good to go before you do file. The other thing I also did input was like, investments and bank accounts and things like that. And so kind of jumping off of that, if you are interested in opening a Roth IRA or you already have a Roth IRA, you can make, what year are we in? Okay, for 2025, you can make like a up to $7,000
Yep.
contribution to that. And you don't, like say you forgot last year, you are allowed to make that contribution until you file your taxes. So like even though right now it's 2026, you can still make your contribution for 2025 if, you do have that account and haven't done it yet. But so just be mindful of that too.
And keep it in mind for your own personal situation, whether a Roth is the best case for you or not.
I'm not recommending it or anything. I'm just saying like if you happen to have that, while doing your taxes is like a good reminder of, have I put money in that yet? And like make sure you also input that into your taxes when you file, because I think like some people could get a deduction on that as well.
Yep.
But yeah, that was my experience, and it was a lot less, traumatic and painful than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
But like Tristan is a little more experienced at this than me. So how was your experience?
So this is my, oh man, I've been doing taxes for a few years now. So this is about this one. I think it's in my third or fourth year, somewhere around there. And it was relatively, this one was a little more painful. Actually, I'll be honest. This year was a little bit more painful for me. Not in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't that much more painful, but there were a lot of accounts that I was moving and closing. And it's mostly this past year, I kind of spent some time optimizing where my money was to make sure that it was kind of making the most income back for me. And what that meant was I was moving money from some accounts to other accounts. I was closing accounts. To be very clear, it's not a lot of extra income, but it's some here and there, right? We're talking mostly, getting into like investing with stocks and things like that. And I just found certain institutions handled that a little bit better than others, in my opinion. So I spent a lot of time moving assets around and closing certain accounts. When you do taxes, though, taxes don't really tend to care what institutions you're at. They only care about what income you may have made when your assets were at that institution. So even if, as an example, if you had an account, let's say you had an account for a year plus like 3 months in the following year. So from like January to March, you had this account, you decide, I'm going to take my assets, I'm going to go elsewhere. I made some income off it. I don't really like them anymore for whatever reason. And you close that account. For the following year of taxes, you're still going to have to pull documents from that portal and file those taxes from them. Whatever new institution you have, since they're also in the same year, you're also going to have to pull taxes for them. It doesn't complicate your actual filing that much more. It just means that you're going to have to remember to go track down those documents and log into your previous institution to grab those documents. And sometimes they will, they're supposed to, also, they're supposed to remind you to go pull from them. Sometimes they forget. And part of the reason I mentioned check your email, check your mailbox, is if you close your online account with some institutions, they will only mail it to you.
Oh, no.
So make sure you're just keeping track of that as those are coming in, right? Yeah. Even if you were paperless, subscribed to them previously, because you no longer have an online account with them, they'll probably just mail it to you. So just be aware.
And I guess, too, with that, make sure when you do close your accounts that like the address they have on file is accurate.
Yeah, that's a very good call out, because if you're at a different address and if you do move, you should do I think it's called USPS forwarding. That ensures that type of mail will get forwarded to your new address for a certain period of time, and they're supposed to update it in their end. But to Emily's point, do it yourself and make sure that it's correct by the time you're closing that too, 100%. But in terms of actually filing, it wasn't that bad outside of gathering the documents and scanning some in that were paper documents. My first year, I spent a lot of time doing a lot of the manual legwork as well, because I wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure that it was right. Yeah, 100%
We have anxiety.
Yeah. But this year, I did use the scan feature. I still checked against the documents to make sure all the fields that they said it was supposed to be pulled from were correct. But ultimately, I kind of trusted the scanning to work, and I found that for the most part, it was pretty on point. There were some things I needed to correct that weren't quite correct, but I would say, like, I give it, like, honestly, 95 to 99% accurate, depending on the kind of documents.
That's pretty good.
It even yelled at me when I uploaded documents that I didn't need. It was like, I don't need this. Why are you uploading it? Which was cool. In the grand scheme of actually putting my taxes in and kind of going through, I did have some donations as well. There's a few organizations, and I'll give a quick plug. I love the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They're a technology advocate. Definitely check them out. Love them. I do donate to them, and that was something they're, I think it's a 501c charitable organization, so they are tax deductible.
And did they automatically send you like a form for taxes?
They did not.
Okay.
So
how does that work?
So in that case, I kind of just put them as, there's some deductions you can get in your taxes when you do a financial charitable donation. There's also a difference if you donate goods. So if you go to Goodwill, for example, you can also donate that way. I did have a few donations here and there for Goodwill. You're supposed to kind of, I think the term is you value the donated item as basically the market value. What is somebody else willing to pay for that item? Don't quote me entirely on that. There's some weird things with some items, but the point being you can donate to places like Goodwill, Salvation Army, places like that, and you'll get receipts. You can get tax receipts for those. And those can be useful, right? If you're donating something, you can get some tax deduction off of that. For most, my understanding is for most income levels, it won't be that significant, but you'll get some deduction out of that. So if you have some old, and this is kind of a good call out too, if you have some old things, some old clothes that you're not using anymore, maybe they don't fit you, donate them. It could be good for someone else to buy those from a Goodwill and have that, especially if it's still in pretty good condition too, rather than it just sitting in your closet. And it can help your taxes ultimately if you have some extra income and then you end up paying more.
I guess also, just because like you're inputting something into filing your taxes, don't necessarily expect that it's going to give you more of a return or anything
100%.
Like that. Like, yes, it may, and like, these charitable donations may change like how much you get back in a refund, but they also may not. So when you go to do it, don't be like, obvious, like it didn't, like something's broken, it didn't work because it says, my thing doesn't apply. Like it's not always the case that like just because you donated or because you have this much in an investment account or whatever, that it's going to raise or lower your taxes. It's a very, 100%. It's very specific to like an individual person's filing and situation, whether or not it's going to apply. So just be mindful of that too.
And I will point out, even in my case, I was able to get some level of deduction. I think it's called a standard deduction. But the reality is, in the grand scheme of things, like I can't say, it's definitely not going to make a huge difference, but it can help. It can help, especially if you have a lot of moving assets. Yeah. So. Yeah, putting those in, the financial one's obviously a little easier. You just need to make sure you're kind of tracking those yourselves. The ones that I send to, like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, for example, they send me an email saying how much I donated and all that, and that's generally a good enough reference. In some cases, you need an actual receipt. That's why Goodwill has sort of their formal ones that they sign off on in the store and say, this person definitely donated on this day. But for the most part, as long as you have some reference that the donation was made, it's generally good enough. And things like TurboTax and other platforms generally have a place you can just throw in the amount that you donated, and if any more information is needed, they'll let you know. So in the grand scheme of things, similar to Emily, just put in my W-2s, put in my 1099s, ran through the process.
1099?
1099 is just if you made interest on any.
Okay. Yeah.
So
sorry, I don't know the numbers.
Yeah. So if you have a good example, you have a savings account that has some interest on it, you'll get a 1099 from your bank.
Got it.
Yeah. So when you throw that into TurboTax, it'll do some things, or any platform, they'll do things with those. They'll ask if you have charitable donations, if you've been donating items. They usually even have a section to help you find what generally the value of items are. At least TurboTax does. I think a few other platforms do as well. That can be useful. Again, it could make significant changes. It could do absolutely nothing. Both things can be true depending on how those deductions are taken.
Yeah. And that's also not just true for like charitable donations. Like that's also true of like your Roth. That's also true of like, maybe my overtime wasn't significant enough to make a difference. That's kind of true of anything you're inputting.
Yeah, and I'll point out as well, if you, I will say, there are some parts of taxes that are very smooth. If you, for example, put money into a 401k, your W-2 generally will reflect that. So you don't have to go chase down what does it look like if my employer is doing contributions and all that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah.
Some things. There's other things where it's more complicated and annoying. A lot of things like retirement donation through your employer is generally easier to handle because they kind of just send you one doc with everything on it. So yeah, once I input all my information, once I put in all the different receipts and all that I had, just kind of went through the process, and at the end of it, checked everything over a couple of times. I always keep, even from, you should, as you do taxes, you should keep a lot of your previous year documentation, just because a lot of times your current year will reference some of the old stuff. There's some information they want from the old filings, so you may have to go and grab those. So make sure you're keeping your old one around in a safe place that you can go back to. So just make sure you're backing that up, because if you have to go and retrieve it from one of these platforms, they may or may not keep it, and then it's a little rough to get those numbers afterwards. You can. Yeah. It's just more difficult.
And, like, worst case, you, like, get audited years later or something. Like, you're going to want to have that tucked away where you can access it and, like, prove, you know, you are representing yourself accurately.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So this is a big, honestly, I think one of the biggest takeaways, when I first started doing tax, one of the biggest takeaways I got was keep everything for a little bit. It doesn't mean you need to keep all of your tax stuff forever. I can't remember off the top of my head, and again, this is not financial advice, so I don't want to tell you how long you should keep it for. There is a certain amount of years you should keep, but I believe on the IRS site they do have a resource actually talking about that. So depending on your situation, look into that and see how long you need to keep for. The point being, once I did my taxes though, filed it away to both the state and federal government. It went smoothly. Didn't have much issue with it around. Again, I've done this a few years in a row, so this year was a little less clockwork than I would have liked it to be because of sort of some movements of accounts and all that. But in the grand scheme of things, if, you know, the most you have is like a checking account and a savings account, maybe you have like an investment account here and there. It's usually pretty easy to pull those docs and put them in the platform. And as long as you're checking your numbers, I find it to be pretty on point.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is too, like when you're done inputting all that stuff, I think with TurboTax you get like one filing free or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're like, I don't know, you're using TurboTax for multiple people, or like you're in a household where like you need to file, but like your sister also needs to file, one of you may end up having to like pay to file your taxes. So I don't want anyone to like get to the end and feel like, why are they making me pay? Like, this is a scam. Like, that's, you know, expected.
It's a part of the process, yeah. I will point out, there are certain versions of, at least TurboTax, I can't speak for other services, but there are certain versions of TurboTax that will include a certain amount of free filings. And you can use those. You can use one, and then let's say you have, you know, a sibling in the house, or I would actually only recommend sharing in general with family. You can share with friends too. Share with trusted people. Yeah. You can generally speaking, for most things, that's how you should treat it.
Yeah.
You can give them kind of one of those free filings. They may still have to pay for, I believe it's I'm going to misremember. It's either the federal or state one that they give you a set for, and then the other one you almost always have to pay for. And I want to say it's the state one you have to pay for every time. I think you get it's like 5 free federal filings. So definitely remember that in case you have siblings or relatives in the house. Let them use that so you all aren't paying more for the same software every year. Yeah. So, yeah. But overall, I mean, I think for both of us, it was a relatively smooth process.
Yeah, don't be scared. You'll do great, I'm sure. But, generally speaking, it went pretty smoothly. I feel like once you do it once, you then kind of like, quote unquote, know how to do your taxes. Like, it's not like, you know, I made it through this year, but like, how am I going to figure out what to do next year type of thing. So generally, like, you just kind of bite the bullet for the first time, but after that, like, you'll be okay, especially if you're using software that like prompts you for everything. Yeah. I feel like that's, for me, the easiest. Like, I would rather pay for the software than like have to try to figure it out by myself. I honestly, and I agree with that. And I think at least for your first year, frankly, that's probably the way you should go. The software can be expensive. You know, there's no understatement to that. And again, the IRS has a lot of different partners and vendors where there may be at least free qualification for federal filing for free. I recommend you look at those. You know, save a few bucks here and there where you can. There's no reason to pay for it if you don't have to. But at the same time, doing it the first year, seeing all the documents you need to enter, seeing all the different statements and incomes and all that stuff, that makes a difference. It might be good just to see it the first year, especially if you don't have someone you can reference to help you directly. But keep it in mind, there's a lot of free resources out there, especially if you're a student. I feel like there's things on campus you can probably use as well. Oh, yeah. That will help you. About that, yeah. And your parents. I almost promise, your parents have done taxes before. Yeah. So having potentially them walk through, if that's an option, might also be useful. Or even an older sibling who maybe has had a job for longer. Yeah, helping them walk through. I feel like with the software you're using, like they'll still walk you through the more complicated aspects. But if you just, for whatever reason are more comfortable paying someone else to take a look at it or do them for you or whatever, again, like don't feel like, you're copping out by using those resources. Like you are allowed to like use whatever you are most comfortable with, especially because this is like, isn't just, you doing something as a hobby. It's like something you need to take very seriously. Like if at the end of the day, your anxiety is going to be less if you go to, H&R Block and have them do it for you or whatever, like do what's best for you. Yeah.
And even if it costs extra, right? Again, first year, understanding how it works and doing it correctly so then you can understand in the future might be worth the cost. 100%.
Yeah.
And to be clear as well, right? Everyone's personal situation is going to be a little bit different as they're filing taxes. If you've had previous jobs, for example, or you've only had one job, or you're a student, or even if you're in the military, all those factors and more can make a difference in how your taxes sort of play out. Right. So just make sure you're doing the proper research. Even as much as we're talking about our experiences here, this is very much from our individual filing perspective.
It's a very informal, informal discussion about how, we got through it. That doesn't necessarily mean that like our journey needs to be the same as yours.
Yes.
Like do what's best for you.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, yeah. But I think with that, that's probably the first episode. So wrap it up here.
Crazy. If anyone has any questions, please send them to us.
Not about taxes, probably.
Not about taxes. No. Just, if, you're looking, for something else that you want to learn about or don't know how to do or like feel like is a real young adult struggle that you'd love to hear us talk about, like we're definitely receptive to feedback. Yeah.
The point is the podcast is supposed to be under 30. So what have we experienced kind of in this time that we are, I'm going to call it, I know I'm going to say the word adulting. Yeah. I mean, can we call it adulting really though? But yeah.
I feel like we can. We were adults. We did our taxes. I'm proud of us.
Is that what makes you an adult is you just file your taxes? Yeah. But if there's anything you're like, hey, I'm in college. I've never done this. Or even if you're just like, hey, can you talk about this thing? And maybe we can. Maybe we can. And we'll kind of figure out what
And this is just our perspective as, two peers that are also just trying to figure it out. This is not like, from an expert that's been doing this for 30 years. We're just trying to give our experience, kind of our take as someone who is also seeing these things for the first time.
I mean, eventually it'll be 30 years.
Eventually.
I don't want to think too much about that.
Yeah.
But I think with that, we'll close out the first episode. Thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time.